tonight's special edition of Elections Weekly. It has been a while since our last episode. There's been a bunch of stuff that's happened in the meantime. Some of it interesting, some of it uninteresting. But we figured we'd come back for tonight because we have a very interesting event that has occurred, something that's not happened in over 100 years. We've had a Speaker of the House race election, as it were, that did not result in a candidate winning on the first ballot. This used to be more common than it is, but generally speaking, over the last century, give or take, another 20 years, it has been just generally normal that the leader of the majority party gets elected as the House Speaker with no difficulty whatsoever. This is the exception. A group of Republicans, you may call them a bunch of terms. I've heard terms like idiot, imbecile, moron, being thrown around, have decided that they do not want Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. They want someone else as Speaker. Who do they want as Speaker? They've not said. They put up Jim Jordan, who is not running for Speaker and does not want to be Speaker of the House. The conditions they've made for potentially changing their vote to support McCarthy are incomprehensible at best and nonsensical power grabs at worst. We'll talk about kind of what they're asking for and what the potential path forward here could be. But needless to say, not the day Kevin McCarthy wanted. This is a razor-thin House majority, 222 to 213. To 213. Oh, it's starting to pour outside. 222 to 213 majority in the House of Representatives. Obviously, there is a Democrat. Virginia's 4th district is vacant because of the death of the incumbent congressman. So it's really 222 to 212 right now, which means 218 votes are needed to become House Speaker. And 19 have defected, and most of the votes, the last vote had 20 that defected, an additional Republican defected, but said he's also open to undefecting at a later undisclosed point. So this is the condition as it is right now of where these defecting votes are come from. These are all members of the House Freedom Caucus, although it's not a majority of the House Freedom Caucus. A majority of House Freedom Caucus members have voted for Kevin McCarthy. It is just these 20 members that have decided that they're too cool for school. So let's go ahead and throw it around here. First, what are your initial thoughts? Then we'll kind of go into their demands that they've had accepted and rejected along the way, and how we see this thing going forward. I see a bunch of possibilities being thrown around here, but most of them seem pretty unlikely at best. So what do you guys think? What's going on here? And just where are we going to start off the show, I guess?
I am not at all surprised that it went this way for McCarthy. I am surprised that there seems to be no heir apparent to McCarthy. But yeah, this is not that big a shock. The Freedom Caucus did not want to vote for McCarthy. They said as much. So yeah, I'm not surprised that he didn't win on first ballot. I don't know why he's sticking around. Going to a second and third ballot doesn't seem to be a great strategy when nothing's changed. You're not going to beat them into submission.
Well, I think that's their exact plan, and I will mention, of course, that with these votes here, with the Freedom Caucus, with all this stuff going on, the vast majority of Republicans do support Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. Sure. This is not debatable. There is a lot of anger being thrown around towards these 20 members of Congress right now, or actually not even members of Congress, because we have not sworn in the new Congress yet. They're all members elect at this point. So great job. So obviously, this is a big problem if you're a Republican. If you're a Freedom Caucus member who is inclined to not vote for any bills for any reason whatsoever, this is not a big deal. On the other hand, if you're a Republican who would like to, for example, fire Nancy Pelosi staff members or have a new Speaker of the House, start investigations, get committee memberships, and all this stuff set in place, you're pretty unhappy right now. And it's no surprise that people like Dan Crenshaw, Don Bacon, Patrick McHenry, among others, are fuming right now, to say the least, over what is going on. Even the more inexplicable thing is that Bob Good said yesterday that there would be a strong conservative candidate they had that would be everyone would go for, and they'd go for him instead of Scalise or instead of McCarthy. That was a lie, because they're going for Jim Jordan, who is not running for
and who does not
speaker.
want the speakership.
They
Most
didn't tell their
crucially,
candidate. They
does
didn't
not
tell
seem to
their
want the
candidate.
role of Speaker of the House.
He doesn't.
They
Who would?
didn't-
Who would?
their
He wants to be.
secret
He wants to be Oversight Committee chair. Why would you want to be House Speaker instead of Oversight Committee chair?
Their secret candidate was so secret the candidate didn't even know who they were.
And they're saying this is a benefit. They're saying this is a benefit that this is that he's like Cincinnatus, that he doesn't want the job, so he'd be perfect for the job, of course. Obviously, most Republicans don't agree. 202 of them, in fact, including Jim Jordan. But this is what they've apparently chosen to go with right now.
Jim Jordan will be voting for McCarthy even on the ballot that elects Jim Jordan as Speaker.
It's and again, you need a majority of votes. This is not like the Senate, where you only need a majority of the majority party and a majority of the minority party to determine memberships. The Senate elects a president pro tem by unanimous vote generally, but all things considered, they don't have this problem. In the House, though, even though all but 20 Republicans are on board for Kevin McCarthy, they need everyone to be on board pretty much. And there are a bunch of Republicans who have said they will not vote. Bob Good, for example, said he will never vote for Kevin McCarthy, ever, for any circumstances whatsoever. Even if everything he wants is given to him, he will not vote for Kevin McCarthy because he's mad that Kevin McCarthy spent against him in the primary.
I think there are a few votes like that. I think there are enough Bob Good types that McCarthy just can't get through.
So I mean, we got this whole debacle going on. To what you were saying earlier, I think the strategy here for McCarthy is pretty simple: is to beat them into submission. The number one thing that a lot of these members of the Freedom Caucus would be upset about is if conservative media dislikes them. And if you have Sean Hannity and talk radio host going against you 24/7 because you're doing something they don't like, that's harder to defend. That's something that could be a personal damage to their reputation. Do I think Matt Gaetz, Bob Good, Lauren Boebert care about this too much? Probably not. But it could be enough to sway some people over. And if you have a couple Democratic absences or non-votes, this gets into a situation where the people are really backed into the corner, the ones who don't want McCarthy.
See, I think the strategy, you kind of mentioned it, is vote until there are no Democrats left in the House. Honestly, I don't know why they agreed to this whole motion to adjourn. If I'm McCarthy, the strategy is, okay, we're going to vote until 4 a.m, until there are no Democrats there. And then all he needs is a majority of his caucus, which he has.
He has a decisive majority of his caucus, to put it simply.
Yeah, he has 90%.
Yes, which is a lot. Generally speaking, and this is interesting. So let's go to the demands here. One of the things the Freedom Caucus have been very vocal and specific in what demands they want. And a lot of them have been agreed to. One thing which is ironic, of course, is they want majority above the majority. Unless majority of Republicans support a bill, they don't want it to go to the floor. This does not mean, however, that when a majority of Republicans support Kevin McCarthy, they're going to be just let that happen. They obviously want majority of the majority to benefit themselves. So among the things they have wanted is a bunch of rule reforms, which nobody is asking for, nobody cares about, and that are of no concern to virtually anyone whatsoever. Bringing back the motion to vacate the chair, because they want to be able to hold the speaker for ransom whenever they want. I think this has been dropped down to threshold of 5. This is brought down to a threshold of 5, with the idea being that there could also be only 5 Republicans would be needed to file a discharge petition. So in other words, if these Republicans do decide to vacate the chair, those moderate Republicans could immediately team up with Democrats and do a bunch of things the Freedom Caucus does not like. That's one thing they've wanted. They've wanted, among others, votes on committee chairs to be different. They want a ban on earmarks, which the caucus already resoundingly voted against. They voted to keep earmarks. So I'm not sure what they're looking at here in terms of that specific angle. And more recently, they put out a list of demands that are frankly incredulous. The big ones, they want to basically control all committee chairs. They want to have all of their people in all of the committees they want in all the preferential spots. They want to complete control of that. And they also want $0 to be spent on any primary, any open primary by Republican leadership. These are, of course, never going to happen. These are ridiculous, ludicrous demands that no one would accept. But these are the conditions they've laid out for McCarthy. And so now we're in a bit of a problem. You have, obviously, the vast majority of the caucus does not want a Freedom Caucus member as speaker. About half of the Freedom Caucus does not want anyone as speaker who they do not like. So we're at an impasse here. There's not really a solution you can come up with pretty easily other than waiting for Democrats to go away. And Democrats have no reason to go away because this is just good publicity for them.
No, this is a great day if you're a Democrat. I mean, this is the best majority, the best minority they could ask for.
Oh, they were having fun. If you watched the if anyone who was watching the C-SPAN coverage of this, they were having a blast. A little bit too much of a blast, actually. I could have used less of the lengthy rants about why Hakeem Jeffries was going to be the greatest House Speaker of all time, for example. But you can tell they were enjoying themselves because this is clearly amusing content.
I was also enjoying myself.
Yeah, it's incredibly amusing. So let's go ahead and look at some of these members here that are not allowing that do not want Kevin McCarthy. You of course have Bob Good from Virginia's 4th District, who was famously elected because the previous Republican officiated a gay marriage, and that angered some people. You have
I can't believe that guy turns out to be a bomb thrower.
Yep. You have a Scott Perry, who's notable for being involved to some degree in January 6th. You have Mary Miller, who has faced a controversy for posts for praise of Adolf Hitler to some degree. You have Dan Bishop, who is a normal Republican generally, so that's a really confusing one. You got a couple of new people like Keith Self and Andy Ogles in Tennessee.
And,
you have Matt Gaetz.
Eli Crane.
Yeah,
Eli
Crane there. You've got, of course, Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar. It was interesting to see Gosar apparently reconcile with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the House floor. They appear to have some sort of discussion in detail there. Obviously, for those of you who were paying attention over the last few years, Gosar was censured by the House for posting a video of himself, edited video of him in Attack on Titan murdering Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Which so they appear
media literacy is dead if he identifies with that show.
So you've got all of this. You got Lauren Boebert, who won her election by I think 300 votes. This is not pushed her to the center, but it's in fact convinced her to apparently get even more crazy. You have Matt Rosendale, who I'm pretty sure was Matt Rosendale the guy who was he the one who moved from West Virginia, or was he the one who got in a fist fight with a reporter?
No, the guy who got into a fist fight was Greg Gianforte.
Oh yeah, the governor.
He's now governor.
Of Montana. Yeah.
Wasn't Rosendale from Jersey?
Yeah, he was from
Jersey.
He's
from Maryland. He's from Maryland. You're
Maryland,
both wrong.
Maryland,
He's
Matt
from
Rosendale.
Maryland.
Yeah.
You fool.
So obviously, this is a great selection of A-plus figures who know what they're doing. They're great political minds who definitely have a plan here. I would love to know the plan because they've not given the plan, but I'm sure they were thinking.
What the heck's Josh Breachin's deal too? Why is he doing this? And Michael Cloud. Why are those two guys doing
So Michael Cloud is mad that his district took in more Democrats this time, even though it's still not competitive. And Josh Breachin I think he was a former aide for Jim Info, and so he's really, really angry about deficits. So the Breachin one kind of makes a little bit of sense. Cloud is just literally just mauling that he has Democrats in his district now.
Which, can I just say, I find that hilarious.
It's honestly, and then the latest one is Byron Donalds, who is widely respected in the caucus, generally liked by both sides. Seems convinced that McCarthy can't get enough votes, but then goes and votes for Jim Jordan, who one is not running for speaker, and two would not get enough votes to if he were actually a candidate.
To defend Donalds, that just seems to be a protest of just. I don't think McCarthy can win, then I support Jordan.
Agreed.
At this rate. And I think that's kind of thing to talk about is that I don't know if I necessarily disagree with Byron Donalds that Kevin McCarthy can't get to 218.
I don't think he can.
I really don't know if Kevin McCarthy can get to 218 by this point.
Because he needs to not lose 5 Republicans. And he needs to actually really not lose 4. Because Bob Good has said he will never vote for McCarthy, and I actually believe him there. He seems extremely angry.
Bob Good doesn't want a team to vote for anyone that's not Bob Good or Jim Jordan.
Which, you know what? That's fine. There's always one.
Bob Good going to vote for Bob Good. Bob Good.
Bob Bad.
So obviously, that's the situation on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, every single Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries. So congratulations, you have a unified political party that knows what they are doing. In particular, this leaves a few options. Now, there's, I think, virtually no scenario where Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker. This is
Agreed.
a pretty ridiculous thing I've seen floating around. It's not going to happen. What could happen that would really make the Freedom Caucus angry is some scenario where Democrats are required to support the speaker vote. Now, you may wonder why this would happen. I think this would actually be incredibly funny and ironic because this has happened to the Freedom Caucus forever. This is what the Freedom Caucus does. One, they say they will never vote for any budget bill whatsoever. They start flat off, no vote on a budget bill, no omnibus. The omnibus has to be passed. So they don't have enough votes. Who do they go to? The Democrats. The Democrats provide them votes to pass the omnibus. The Freedom Caucus, of course, looks at this and is like, wait, why are you negotiating with them and not me? Which, of course, completely forgets the fact they said they will never vote for this thing at all. So then they use this and say, the omnibus is bad. All omnibus spending is bad. I'm never voting for an omnibus ever. And this cycle just continues repeating. You see this. This is the speaker thing. It's literally the speaker thing. They said they never vote for McCarthy. Well, what's the other option? One, they find someone who the Freedom Caucus likes, which seems fleetingly unlikely. Or two, look at Democrats and see if they'd be willing to help out in some way. Which is the more viable scenario at this point? I don't think doing with Democrats is something that they would want to do.
I don't think they. Okay, so I've seen this going around. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the era you're talking about, that was a long time ago. The Boehner omnibus situation, that was a long time
it's still
ago.
now. No, it's still now. It happened under Trump. It happened
under
Trump.
I thought you were talking about the Boehner.
The reason they're so mad at Paul Ryan, they were always mad at Paul Ryan, is he used that for omnibus spending because the Freedom Caucus refused to vote on spending bills. They refused to even negotiate on spending bills.
Well, regardless, I think it's easier to vote for a spending bill and justify that as a Democrat than to justify a vote for Kevin McCarthy to be speaker. I think that's a harder vote to justify. I don't know that I can see Democrats agreeing to support that.
It wouldn't be McCarthy. It would have to be someone who's not Kevin McCarthy. It would have to be someone in the center of the caucus.
It would. It couldn't be McCarthy. I don't think you get any Democrats to support McCarthy no matter what they give.
I do think at some point push will have to come to shove and someone will have to cave here because, again, they need to be sworn in. Nothing can be done. I think we now see why Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer were so insistent on getting an omnibus bill done before the new Congress was sworn in for the whole year.
Could you imagine if we had a spending bill right now?
Oh, the Freedom Caucus would be even
very bad.
The Freedom Caucus would be even more stringent. They would be even more stringent than not voting because if people aren't sworn in, you can't possibly pass a budget. So, if you're a Freedom Caucus member, that's the perfect scenario. There's no possible way they could lose a budget vote because there would be no vote because there's no speaker.
We narrowly avoided disaster.
Yep. And again, the Senate, both parties in the Senate seem to have a much better understanding of how government can work than the House.
Well, because the Senate swore in all its members today.
Yeah, the Senate actually did a job today.
Yeah, the Senate did.
The Senate had its nice little happy thing. Ben Sass said its goodbyes, and
Pat Toomey said his goodbyes. John Fetterman came in.
Katie Britt came in.
The Senate operated like a normal government body should. And then the House was throwing poo.
It's literally the why can't you just be normal meme. That's basically what the House is right now. And then the House wonders why the Senate never gets them involved and asks them to do anything other than vote on bills the Senate likes. This is why. House. If you want to be treated like adults, behave like adults.
Do you remember that quote from 2 weeks ago? I forget which Senate member it was from the Republicans who said the House just doesn't like governing and they're not a serious political body. Boy, were they prescient.
Yep. So at this point, what are the options here? So the House is adjourned for the day. There's no more vote for the day. There's been no swearing in. Nothing has gone on other than a complete waste of everybody's time. Tomorrow they will return. Apparently there are negotiations going on. The problem, of course, is that the Freedom Caucus negotiation demands are ridiculous and will not be approved. If they were approved, the moderates would revolt because the moderates do not want the House Freedom Caucus to take all of their committee slots, especially when the House Freedom Caucus.
Yeah, who knew that would be an unmovable line is to just take away committee spots and give them all to the House Freedom Caucus. Who could have guessed that was an unmovable red line for any normal individual?
Yep. So That's one potential area. So what are the options you have going forward? One is that a new candidate is that Kevin McCarthy just attrition battle here. It's the Battle of Leningrad. They just keep holding votes until eventually enough Democrats just leave, and then they win. And then the Republican, McCarthy wins the vote. That's one option. Or the House Freedom Caucus gives up. Again, this would rely on the conservative media really turning on the House Freedom Caucus, which is possible. We've seen in particular today Mark Levin get very, very angry. And he is someone who's fairly in touch with the conservative side of the aisle. Hannity would be another one to pay attention to. Not so much Tucker Carlson, but really Hannity. If Hannity is starting to turn on this would be where you'd be concerned. So that's one possibility.
Well, Carlson is still the most watched media host. So.
He is, but he's not influential. He doesn't have the base behind
He doesn't have a radio show like Sean Hannity.
He doesn't have a radio.
He doesn't have the radio show.
No, the radio. If there's one thing that boomer conservatives love, it's AM radio. That's
fair. That's fair.
It's absolutely huge on the conservative side of the aisle.
But what I will say for Hannity, at least, if Hannity is still parroting the Trump line, Trump just kind of backed off a little bit on his McCarthy endorsement.
Yep.
So that could be a sign.
Yeah. So that's one option. The other option is, or one of the other options is another Republican comes forward to be presented as speaker, and everyone agrees on it. I think the general consensus is that if Steve Scalise were the candidate, generally he would have very little difficulty becoming speaker. The problem here is simple. One, he does not want to do this right now. And this would involve leapfrogging leadership, backstabbing. That's not generally something Steve Scalise is known for doing. The other thing is, of course, Steve Scalise is more conservative than McCarthy. There could be potentially some people on the moderate side who would be very, very vocally in favor of McCarthy, who would be less open to Scalise. It's not necessarily certain, but it's possible.
Didn't not just Bob Good, I think Scott Perry, Andy Biggs, and Gosar all said they weren't going to support anybody in the current leadership.
No, that was Rosendale. Rosendale said he would.
That was Rosendale.
He said
that was just Rosendale being Rosendale. I don't think any of the, I guess, leaders of this things, what you would say is Perry and Biggs, have.
It's Biggs. It is Perry. It is Biggs. To some degree, you could probably. I don't even know Chip Roy. Maybe you could throw him in there, but he's too much of a backbencher to even really.
I remember reading last night, and I think it got posted in our chat that the whips didn't think Scalise would have the votes either. And based on the fact that there were 20 holdouts, I tend to buy that.
He still could only afford to lose 5, which. Would the Freedom Caucus be willing to turn down on their demands if Scalise is the person? I don't really think so.
No, I don't think so.
I think you maybe gain most 10 back. I'd say.
Yeah, you gain probably the Anna Paulina Lunas of the world. You gain Michael Cloud back probably. Breachin maybe. Ogles maybe. It's the
originals.
It's the Andy Biggs, Scott Perry, Paul Gosar, Bob Good. Those are a challenge. However, at that point, if you're only losing 6, you just need one Democrat to leave. That's more of a credible thing to ask for.
Henry Cuellar, step on down.
Yep.
But if I'm the Democrats, I'm holding everybody. I'm holding all my people in the room. I'm grabbing the sergeant at arms, being like, "Don't let anyone leave."
Yep. So that's one option. Another option is that there is some sort of coalition deal. This is not likely at all, but actually, what I would say is this option becomes more likely the longer this thing pulls out.
Agreed.
Because we actually do need a functional body of government, and there are enough people on both sides.
That's just a suggestion of the Constitution, Eric. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to happen. It's just a suggestion. We can just let the Senate run.
I think there are enough institutionalists in the House and enough people in the House who would like to actually be able to tell their constituents they did something, who would be open to some sort of arrangement in the meantime where you have a compromised speaker candidate that generally just lets the body exist. This would still be a problem though, because one, this would really anger progressives. This would extremely anger progressives. This would also really, really, really anger the Freedom Caucus. It would probably be irreconcilable anger.
I think caucus. Oh yeah, I think a coalition deal starts Tea Party too.
No, what I think honestly, it could start that, or it could start conservative media genuinely turning on the Freedom Caucus for the first time, because this is unequivocally their fault. they've left no other
It could
option.
be.
if
Why
that's the
wouldn't
case.
it be both? I don't get why.
Yeah.
It could be both. It could be both.
Yeah,
It
the
just-
Freedom
it would
Caucus
It could
disbands.
very easily be both.
Yeah,
Where-
and then you get the Freedom Caucus 2, which is
Yeah.
just like the Krusty Krab 2, where it's just the same
Trump-
thing.
And the
Yeah.
Trump Organization, too.
Yeah.
I forgot
and then-
about that.
Yeah, and then the option.
Good reference, Dylan. Good reference.
Thank
And then
you.
the option that will not happen is when Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker. That's not going to happen. So let's just throw that one to the side. You have 3 options. 1, McCarthy wins. 2, some other Republican wins. 3, this thing goes on long enough that like you get Don Bacon as speaker or something.
You know who the people want. You know who the people call for, Eric. You
Who?
know who they really want as speaker. It's the man who we all know has wanted to be speaker forever. And
Eric
you would be-
Cantor.
who?
Eric Cantor.
That'd be funny, but no. The
George
real man
Santos?
who's always wanted to be speaker. The back
George
benches,
Santos was
the
already
back
speaker.
benches has been there for like 20 years. Has done nothing.
Scott Perry?
No, not Scott. Scott Perry's only been there since 2014. He hasn't been there for 20 years. Jesus, Scott Perry's almost been there for 10 years.
Oh my
Jesus
God.
Christ. It's been a long time now. But no, I know who the people want as speaker.
Who do they
Buddy
want?
Carter from
Oh.
Georgia's first district. That's who the people want. They want a man who's just been there. Has he? Some of you probably didn't even know who Buddy Carter was until I
Nope.
just said his name right here. But that man is a member of Congress. He represents Savannah and its surrounding area in the part of Georgia's first congressional district. I'm telling you, that will be the man to lead this country to unity. It is Buddy Carter.
Definitely going to
Totally.
be him. So while we have a little bit of time left, we got about 3.5 minutes here left before we're probably going to hop off. Do us a speed run of what has happened in Pennsylvania State House. This is also really interesting. I know
Oh,
you're having
yeah.
an article written out about it.
I'm going to be writing an article about this tonight. It'll be quick fire. I'm not going to go into any details because I have personal connections that wouldn't be happy with me probably. I will say this is still an evolving situation because, and I think it's not impossible here, we thought we had Democrats thought they had put up a unity speaker, a guy by the name of Mark Rozzi. He's a more, I wouldn't necessarily call necessarily full-on moderate a la Frank Burns, but like I would say more libertarian-ish member of the Democratic caucus in Pennsylvania. He's voted against them on some gun bills, and I think there was something, some financial bills as well. He's voted for with Republicans on. Rozzi, however, though, has been pretty typically a Democrat. And people thought that he would be a Democrat, and then he went up there and he said, "Oh, by the way, I am going to be an independent speaker. I am."
Wait, was that not just political fluff? Where he was like, "I'll be an independent."
No, he's actually an independent now.
No, he said he will actually be. He meant independent as been the big I, Dylan, not just lowercase I. Big I.
I see. I read it as the big I, and then I read the quote, and it's like, oh, he's clearly just doing the political fluff thing.
Nope, he is re-registered as an independent. Apparently,
he has said that which would theoretically, even after the specials end, that would mean if Rozzi were to stay an independent, that means the House would be stuck at 101 to 101 to 1. Which, that would be something
beautiful.
interesting.
That's beautiful, honestly.
So, of course, I should say that Rozzi Rose, he has a lot of respect among the Republican base. He came out as someone who was actually sexually abused by Catholic priests. When he was young, he worked on Republicans with one of the many sexual abuse bills that came out of the state house and state senate in Pennsylvania during the last decade. When those issues came up, he gained a lot of, strength and notoriety for coming out against that and showing his strength there in that way. But this would be a big deal. This is a huge deal if he becomes independent. This is a huge deal, whether or not there's a backroom deal that Rozzi would become a Democrat again, when Democrats take back those 3 Allegheny area House seats in the special election. We have no knowledge of that yet. So until that happens, right now, in theory, we have a 101 to 101 to 1 state house. That'll change to 100 to 101 to 1 in theory, because Republicans are losing a member who is going to be their nominee for a super safe R seat in the state Senate. And then who knows? Because when you have a 1-seat majority, Eric and Dylan, when this happens, if someone, were to randomly die, let's say, one of the many old people in the Allegheny or Philadelphia area for the Democrats has a heart attack, it has a heart attack and dies, suddenly Republicans can just do a power grab again and say a Republican dies from, again, a lot of old Republicans out there, dies from a heart attack. That could make things fucked too. So yeah, stuff's not.
So in other words,
you mean narrow majorities are bad?
Yes. You see, guys, when you draw a state house map, that on more occasions than not, because of a lack of truly competitive seats, could push out a 102 to 101 majority on a good amount of occasions instead of just an abnormality. This is called what you have a bad idea. And you may have a bad, excuse me, my camera almost fell there. New camera today, folks. Sorry about that. But until that happens, this is what's called a bad map. And thus, a bad thing is occurring when you only have 1-seat majorities. Because when you only have 1-seat majorities, stuff doesn't run so hot.
It could be worse. It could be North Carolina, where you had the legislature General Assembly was elected 60 to 60. And then they had a power sharing agreement. And then the next year, Republicans win 1 seat, and it becomes 61 to 59. And then one of those Republicans switches and becomes a Democrat to make it 60 to 60 again. And then it later turns out that Republican was bribed in the bathroom by the House Speaker in an IHOP bathroom.
What?
Yeah.
Man, that sounds like a great story. You should write about that, Eric.
Yeah. So, this is this Republican, random backbencher Republican, very conservative, switched parties out of the blue to become a Democrat and give them, a 60-60 split. And then it later turned out that the incumbent House speaking Democrat, the Democratic House Speaker, bribed him in an IHOP bathroom to become a Democrat.
Not even a Waffle House bathroom. He bribed him in IHOP.
Yeah.
Man,
so it could be worse.
bribe.
It could be worse. Just think it could be worse.
It can
Could be
always
better,
be
though.
worse.
It could be better. It could be not bad. We could have not bad options in our government. Who knew that?
You know what? This year wanted to start off with some chaos, Joe.
I don't like the chaos. The chaos makes my heart not work so good, and my heart already
the
wasn't
chaos
working
is
so good
bad.
after I tried to play hockey for the first time in 4 years last Friday.
The chaos is bad for democracy, but it's great content. It's objectively great content.
Good for,
It is
good
objectively
for our
great
channel.
content for us. We love this for us. Objectively, this is fantastic news.
But with that, we'll close off tonight's special episode. Again, thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate your support. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe to us wherever you're watching, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, all of the places that we're at. You can subscribe to us, podcast platforms. Our website's elections-daily.com. We post articles, tools, all sorts of great stuff, so be sure to give us a visit there. But until next time, we'll see you on the next edition of Elections Weekly.